Welcome. We are getting ready to get going now. If you would like to take a seat. And I'm Lynn Nelson Mason. I am the president of the Golden Valley Historical Society Board. I'm not sure if I'm on the mic or not, but I will just holler and use the mic, and we'll get it both ways. And before we dive in, I've got a couple of notes here. So this is our October program. Please mark your calendars for November 13th. For our November program, this will be at the Historic Church and Museum on Golden Valley Road. And that conversation, which is co-sponsored by the Rotary Club of Golden Valley, is on polio and the evolution of the Courage Center. So polio eradication is one of Rotary's major efforts, and they are co-sponsoring that talk with us. This is also the time of year which that is Golden Valley Historical Society's membership renewal and donation drive. If you got a letter in the mail that asked for those things, please return them with those with your generous donation enclosed. If you are not a member, this is a great time to become a member. Membership is $25 or $50 for a household, so it is a really affordable opportunity to support local history. And this is when we have really the bulk of our generous sponsorships and donations from members and the public. So be part of that group. And finally, as you know, GVHS's mission is to preserve and share Golden Valley history, and we're always looking for volunteers to help us do that. Please contact one of the board members. We have these lovely little name tags on, and we can talk to you about board membership, about museum greeters, or about event volunteers. So always looking for a few good volunteers. Now, that's the intro. That was the commercial. We have a wonderful program tonight, and GVHS programs often explore connections between our city's history and national social and cultural history. And as October is National LGBTQ History Month, October 14th was also the day of the first March on Washington, commemorating the 10th anniversary of the Stonewall riots. The second March was October 11th, so we're right in the mix of those dates. It is now National Coming Out Day. So we are pleased to present the history of LGBTQ community in Golden Valley, co-sponsored by Golden Valley Historical Society, Golden Valley Pride Festival, and the City of Golden Valley's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. Golden Valley has a long history of human rights initiatives, and this is one of those areas that Golden Valley has not only a long history, but kind of a leadership position within Minnesota and the cities of Minnesota. So please join me in welcoming board member Nick Thorsen, who will introduce the panel and facilitate the conversation. Thank you, Nick.
Thanks, Lynn. And it is my great pleasure to be not only a member of the Golden Valley Historical Society and its secretary, but also the current chair of the Golden Valley Pride Festival. So we kind of were able to finagle both groups together for the event tonight. So as we begin tonight, one of the things that we're going to be doing tonight is we're going to be talking about stories. And for me, stories begin in 7th grade with a history professor that I had. And the history professor that I had wrote the word history on the chalkboard. And one of the things that he talked about was everyone hates history. And the reason they hate history is because it's a bunch of dates and people and it's boring. And so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing what he said we should be doing, and he erased the word and he rewrote it. And he emphasized the story piece. We're going to be telling stories tonight, and that's what this all is about. It's about telling stories and building our collective history, not only for Golden Valley, but the Historical Society, Golden Valley Pride, and really Minnesota in general. So, this story began with me, as I always do, reading a book. And if you ever run into me or run into my spouse, you will find out that I generally have a history book in my hand. And this particular book is called Land of 10,000 Loves. It's by an individual by the name of Stuart Van Cleve, who is actually the current librarian for Augsburg College. And when he was in grad school, he wrote a book about the history of the queer community in Minnesota in general. And unbeknownst to me, when I purchased the book, there was a section on Golden Valley. And once I moved to Golden Valley, I started diving into that specific section. So if you're interested, it's about pages 267 to 270. It talks about the beginning of the LGBTQ community in Golden Valley, starting in the 70s, in through the 80s and 90s, how they moved from Minnehaha Parkway in Minneapolis to Golden Valley, and really how their migration created a couple of things that Golden Valley is known for, Lavender Hills and the Swish Alps, because they settled in the Tidal Hills area. One thing that I'm going to ask tonight, and this is going to go on for a while, so if you have information, I would love to know this. There's an individual that is quoted in the book, and he used a pseudonym, and the pseudonym is John Anderson. And what John Anderson said is that the neighbors were well-educated, liberal, accepting people. So I mean, we mixed with the neighbors really well, and if you were improving your home and keeping up your yard, they didn't really care. Sounds like good Minnesota people. But the interesting thing about John Anderson is, oh, sorry about that. John Anderson was actually one of the people that helped move the gay community to Golden Valley in general. From what I read in the book, he was a realtor, maybe, and he really helped push the community into the area. So, with that, we will start our panelists tonight on the panel. Tonight on the panel, and they didn't sit in the order that I asked them to, but it's fine. We have Peter Nabel, who is the founder and was the original chair of the Golden Valley Pride Festival. He's also the 2020 Bill Hobbs Award winner. From there, we move on to John Burris, who was on the Golden Valley Human Rights Commission. We have Christopher Robinson, the immediate past chair of Golden Valley Pride and the 2024 Bill Hobbs Human Rights Award winner, and Seth Camphor, our Equity Inclusion Manager for the City of Golden Valley. So thank you, gentlemen, for joining me this evening. And I have some questions. Did you take notes? No. Okay. All right, first question is, how long have you lived in Golden Valley, and what brought you here?
I'm first.
You're first.
My name is, again, Peter Knabel. My family moved to Golden Valley in 1972. My dad built a house in Golden Valley. We moved here. I was a sophomore at Golden Valley High School, starting my first year in Golden Valley was then. So, whatever 1972 to here, I think that's about 53 years, something like that. So, I've been here a long time. I moved out a couple of years after we got married, and then we bought a house back in Golden Valley, and we've been in the current house just down in Glenwood by Meadowbrook School for about 35 years. So we've been here a long time.
And pass it on down.
Jonathan? Thank you, dear. We also served on the 2016 Pride Committee, the original, the first. My name is Jonathan Burris, and I came here because there seemed to be an exodus from downtown. And I had a realtor, there was a gay realtor, and he showed me a picture. This was back in the 90s. He showed me a picture of a house. He said, "You're going to want to buy this house for us." And you know, realtors, they say that every time they show you a picture. Forgive me, any realtors in the audience, but so that was in 1996, and sure enough, I moved from downtown where I'd been living 3 different high-rises in downtown, and I started my law practice focusing on civil rights for gay people specifically in 1985 in October. So, and then traveled in the courts there for years with clients, and both in civil and criminal courts. And we were building community there where people felt safe. Gay people specifically felt safe. And I noticed there, and I'm specific as to the gender too, I must say, is that at that time in the 90s, it was, folks were living in the gay ghetto, is what one thing it was called in downtown Minneapolis. And I had this feeling of sort of abandonment when my clients and other gay people that I represented and come to know decided they were like I eventually I had this feeling of abandonment. I'll put it just that way. That's the way I put it when I was talking to Nick. And that got my curiosity up though. And who was doing it? Who was leaving, moving to Golden Valley specifically? It was primarily lesbians. And I think they were finding that the community was welcoming, and it wasn't all about keeping up your yard. You could raise kids, you could have people not being judgmental if you were willing to contribute to this. It's an old community. That's another thing. When was it founded, Nick? 1858?
86.
1886.
86.
Yeah.
Okay. And my dad, as it happened, was born in a house on Pennsylvania Avenue in 1909, and the house is still there. And he went to North High School. He used to take the streetcar or ride his bike to North High School. And so that was there, and that was something that interested me because I'm a legacy kid in that way. So we live now over on Golden Valley Road, probably on the road that my dad took to high school and eventually to work. Became a judge downtown Minneapolis, so I'm proud to be here and will always be here and supporting this community. So thank you for coming tonight.
Christopher Robinson. I am a more recent transplant. I grew up way outside of the metro area in a small town in southwestern Minnesota and eventually got the hell out and ended up moving up to the Twin Cities so I could be in a better community, a more supportive community. And my partner and I had a house in South Minneapolis. We were just talking about this a little bit ago, kind of what brought us here. We had a house in South Minneapolis, and we realized we needed to move because we wanted to entertain more, we wanted to be closer to some of our friends. And so we've been looking everywhere to try and find a place to live, and Golden Valley was one of the locations we looked at. We looked all over and couldn't find anything that we wanted. And I remember when we drove, for all the times that I've been up in this area and had friends that lived in Bryn Mawr, so I knew kind of the area, a bit. And we kept coming to the room and board outlet. I remember that very specifically, that we'd come to the room and board outlet, and I remember thinking, my God, that's way the hell out there. Like, I don't know what I was thinking from, like, Loring Park and then eventually South Minneapolis. Why did I think this was so far? Who knows? I have no idea. So we ended up looking at a house out here, and when he brought me out here again, I thought, well, I'm not living out here. Where are we? This is crazy. I don't know, maybe I don't have a sense of space. But we ended up getting a house here, that was 12 years ago, and have immediately felt like I was part of the community. And what I love living in Loring Park, I love living in Uptown, that was great, I always felt connected to people there. It was funny though, when we moved to South Minneapolis, I felt like I lost that connection a bit. I knew my neighbors, but I didn't necessarily feel quite that sense of community that I did. But once we moved here, we moved into an area that was just being developed, and we jokingly said that our little cul-de-sac that had been developed was like a United Colors of Benetton ad. And I just dated myself by saying that. I am aware of that, but anyway. Because we moved into an area where there was a lesbian couple behind us with kids, a gay couple across the street just down from us, an African-American couple, and we just had this whole melting pot of people. It was fantastic. We instantly felt like we were part of a small little community and felt accepted. And I'd heard about Gold Valley and the Lavender Valley, and I had friends that had kind of moved out here, but I, again, didn't have that awareness of it. So it very much was moving to this area and then kind of understanding it after the fact, coming to it from like an outsider perspective. So anyway, 12 years and I'm still here. Can't get rid of me. Some of you tried.
I'm probably the shortest that's at time in Golden Valley. So, okay, good. So as I was kindly introduced, I'm the Equity and Inclusion Manager for the City of Golden Valley. I'm also the staff liaison for what used to be the Human Rights Commission, which is now the DEI Commission. And that's ultimately what brought me to Golden Valley was the job. I was working at GVHS as the Equity Director for Healthcare Administration. Absolutely loved it, but one of my colleagues was like, I live in Golden Valley, I think you'd really like working here. And looked at the job, applied for it, and got it, and loved working here. I still love working here. My husband, or my boyfriend at the time, we were living together in Hopkins, really wanted to stay there, loved Hopkins, we walked from downtown. And love that sort of feel, and I hope that Golden Valley can eventually kind of create something like that. Fingers crossed. But we were looking for a home when there's a comic book shop that's a hop, skip, and a jump from City Hall, and so I'd go there quite often to go pick up some comic books. It's owned by a gay man, absolutely loved it. His name's Mikey. If you ever watched Queer as Folk, the person that owns the comic book store there is named Mikey, and I was like, this is quite coincidental, but super cool. And I kept driving past his home that was vacant for a while, and I was like, this is a really cool looking home, and I like working here. I was connected to Pride through my work. And then I also play and am the president of Minneapolis Mayhem Rugby, which is a gay men's rugby team. And so I had a couple of friends that also live in Golden Valley that are on the team. And it was sort of a natural draw. And so I've been living in our home for about 2 years now. We live over near Wesley Park, and really enjoy it. And the more that I live here, the more that I work here. This city is very unique and very special, although we keep saying that it's called Lavender Valley, and there's data to definitely justify that. It continues to sort of speak for itself, and the rumors feel very true in a very positive and loving way. So, yeah.
Oh, no, you can keep it.
Oh.
All right, so the next question is, we can go back and forth, however, we've kind of touched on it a little. What do you know about the history of the LGBTQ population in Golden Valley? Let's start with the head of DEIC.
Cool. I'm not the head of the DEIC, I'm just the staff liaison. But there is data that's out there, and the data is hard to find, but at one point, the census was gathering information on gender and sexuality in a way where it could give you some better data around LGBTQ populations and homes and families. I'm blanking on the institute out of UCLA, but they
Williams
have
Institute.
Huh?
The Williams Institute.
Williams Institute has really good data around gay households, and it does it by county, unfortunately. But Hennepin County is one of the gayest counties in all of Minnesota, but also all of the United States, and specifically gay couples. And so that's a little unique thing. When we're part of Hennepin County, we border Minneapolis, so that's a little bit of the history that I know, along with, we're one of the only cities in the state of Minnesota to ban conversion therapy, which is back in conversation, although it shouldn't be, frankly. So I think that's a pretty unique thing, that a city of our size, 22,000 roughly, really listened to its community and now has made that a pretty well-known point of its history as a government, that we said that this is an inappropriate act. It actually creates more harm and leads to, unfortunately, death. or can lead to death. And so I think that that's a really exciting piece of our history as a government. We're also one of the longest cities, or oldest cities, we're one of the cities that has the oldest human rights commission. So there's really cool data and information out there through the Minnesota Historical Society, historical something, that shares really rich information about human rights commissions across the whole state of Minnesota, and has some really beautiful history on the Golden Valley's history of their human rights commission, and what they've done and what they've been able to do, and that sexuality has been a large piece, and the LGBTQ community has been a large piece of the Human Rights Commission into its current iteration as the DEI Commission. So it's a little bit of history that I personally know, beyond just colloquial history.
So we'll definitely come back this way, and I'd love to hear from the rest of you, but just to, on that 2010 census, Williams Institute, Golden Valley ranked #1 in the state per capita. Obviously, we gotta keep that in mind because it is per capita. But it was followed by Minneapolis, St. Louis Park, who has actually more households, and then St. Paul. So definitely very much Hennepin County. And it also ranked 43rd out of about 1,400 cities in the US, with more than 50 same-sex couples in their household, or in the cities. So, yes. All right. Yes,
Mine's all anecdotal. I just got done saying how I had no idea where I was when we first came here, so I can't claim much more than that. But it was always anecdotal. I knew people that lived out here, I just didn't know where I was going. So it was all anecdotal. It was all a lot of conversation about the support that the community had, but I think that was something that, especially having grown up in a small town and moved here, that I was hyper aware of was the and probably inappropriately, I brought that sense of, like, I was a little bit naive, surprise if you know me, in that when I moved up here, I was used to being in a small town, so everyone was my friend. You know, lock your doors, why would I do that? You know, so I was a little bit naive with that. And we would, you know, I'd go out with my friends, we'd go do things, I'd walk through Loring Park at like 3 a.m. on a Saturday morning, wake up the next day, hear about the stabbings, and then think, what am I doing? Right? So I was very anecdotal, but I still felt very supported in just the whole metro area in general. I felt very comfortable. So when we moved here, and then I started to understand more what Golden Valley was, and a lot of the lore and the history behind it, it made sense to me because I did feel very supported, and that there was a strong sense in this community of we've got you, and it's good to be here, you know. So this is anecdotal.
2014 to 2022, I was on the Human Rights Commission, and it was a lot about gay and lesbians. So I think we had an impact on the community, and just being out and open about our care for everyone's safety and neighborhood feel. So, you know, a lot of people worked long hours during that 8 years that I was on the commission, and made sure that it got out there that we're standing up for equality and love for your neighbor. And I see people in the audience that were very much active in that capacity as well. That's my anecdotal contribution.
So I'm going to ask you anecdotally too, but it's going to be a little bit more pointed. So we're going to go back to what Van Cleve wrote. Specifically, I'd be interested to know, since you moved here in 72, you said? 72. 1978 and 1989 were big years in Golden Valley in relation to gay rights and Human Rights Commission, and love to hear if you have any insight into the gay rights measure that was proposed in 1978, around September. So for a little bit of context, if you've seen the movie Milk, In April of 1978 is when St. Paul actually struck down their human rights measure. And here was Golden Valley putting forward a human rights measure, and one of the smaller cities to actually do it. So I'd love to hear anything about that. Yeah, go
Well,
ahead.
let me start with that. The 1978
Yes.
wasn't, I graduated from high school in 72, so it was 6 years after that. I don't think I was that aware of those kind of things going on.
Okay.
I don't think that well. My history, gay rights, especially in Golden Valley, is more recent. And I come at it, not from gay rights or the Human Rights Commission. My history in Golden Valley, or my interest, is in community events. I had worked 16 years on the Golden Valley Art Music Festival, and that ended in 2020. So I was with the group, we were on the committee for 16 years, working on that event, and with that, eventually that stopped because the original people that were on it for the whole time with me, that kind of worked out, and it was hard to find volunteers at that point. But the last couple of years in that, I thought, I wanted to keep it going or change it into something else, and I thought it would be more impactful, especially given that I understood that 2010 census data about Golden Valley. So I thought it'd be appropriate, and I thought it'd be a good idea, and I thought it'd be fun to start a Golden Valley Pride Festival, as a continuation of the Golden Valley Arts and Music, but changing the theme for something that's more relevant to the city of Golden Valley. So then that was back in 2016. And Aaron and Teresa Black were back. We're on the original committee of 8. Jonathan was on the committee of 8. We made 5 other people. A couple of council members from the city of Golden Valley helped us. Started out with a small budget. Actually, we had no budget. We kind of didn't know what we were doing. But we thought we would put an event on, and we didn't know if anybody would show up. We reserved the Brookview Park. We turned out. We ended up with probably about 2,500 people that showed up that first year back in 2016. So it's been going on since then. But again, my background was starting from the art music and then continuing on into the transitioning to the Golden Valley Pride Festival.
So we'll stick with you, please. So you answered 2 of my questions, but really, why did you decide to become the chair? What attracted you to that position, or was it kind of by default?
Well, it was by default.
I think we voted you in.
Maybe, but I don't think anybody else wanted it. It was fall. We had the event in June of 2016. Fall of 2015, I had the idea, but I'd been thinking about it after working on the arts and music, about changing it and doing a different event. So I put a little note on Facebook, where it was, or what it was about, seeing if anybody was interested in helping start that event. A couple of people said they would. We started out with a group of 8, and we just started planning it, and we didn't have any idea what the event was going to, well, we know what it was going to look like, but we didn't know how involved people would be in it, and we were surprised, happily surprised on how it turned out this year. That was it.
Yeah, so the follow-up question would be, Christopher, how did you become involved?
You're a little too excited about passing that off. So, it's funny because, like something else we were talking about tonight, I swear, I feel like right when we moved in here, that same year was the first year of the festival, and it wasn't, it was a few years later. It doesn't seem like that to me, it seems like that's always been there. But I remember hearing about the festival, and I live a block from, Brookview, so I had no excuse not to go, but I especially did want to go. I wanted to understand, I wanted to support our community, and I felt like it was so important to be a part of something like that, and just be there in the community, and that small community focus compared to the larger Twin Cities Pride Festival. So the first year, we just attended and had a great time. The second year, we volunteered. That was the infamous year of the storm that moved through and waterlogged all the electrical equipment. I had brought down a little bag with like a change of clothes once we set up so that I could volunteer throughout the whole festival. It was so bad that blew away into the swamp somewhere. Never found that stuff again. It just disappeared. It's probably decomposing there now. And then the third year I joined the committee as a volunteer to see if I could help plan the festival. So I did that for a couple of years, and then COVID hit and we had to put the kibosh on everything, and just like Arts and Music Festival and so many others experienced during that time, even when you were working on something, finding volunteers was terrible. It was almost impossible to find people to work on stuff. So I ended up moving into the chair position to kind of help guide it, and then when we came out of, and we did a couple small things during COVID. We did a couple of food and drives for Prism, did a couple other smaller events, and then when we came out of COVID, then we had our, first big festival again. That was our 5th year. We kept putting off the 5-year festival. We had the logo for it for 3 years, and I kept thinking, are we going to get to use it this year? And I was so worried about it because I thought, people are still adjusting to the new normal, and how are people going to feel? We had people asking about, should I mask to be a vendor there? Should I mask to attend? I was so nervous about it. And I think that year we decided we had 7,500 attendees, so probably for the first year back. So I feel like the city came out in force for that. But that was the mechanics of how I got into it. I definitely have thoughts on why, but you probably have a question for that.
You can go right ahead. Why?
It's funny, I've talked to a couple of people about this. I've talked to some very conservative in-laws about this also. And it's funny because the conversations I've had were, I'm surprised you're as liberal as you are, as you've gotten older. Shouldn't you be getting more conservative? I'm surprised you care about the things that you care about as you've gotten older. Shouldn't you be getting more conservative? And I thought, dear Lord, no. I have gone exactly the opposite of that. As I've gotten older, as I've gotten more involved with the community, as I've gotten more involved with Pride, I always felt very, very, very strongly about it. But I think I've just gotten more passionate about it than I ever was before. I don't understand why anyone would not want to create a safe space for our friends, our family, the people that are growing up that have to take this mantle from us when we pass it on. It is so important to me that we create a space where people understand that they are loved and they are supported and that they are important. And I don't, it is so critical to me that people see that kids see that our friends see that. I have so many friends that have, that are late in life gays. I have friends that have come out of the closet at 55 years old and realized that they've denied this their whole life and that they didn't have visibility. I grew up in a small town where I did not know a single other gay person that I was aware of. I'm sure I did, but I didn't realize that. There was no visibility. There was no ability to see anyone else. There were no role models. There was no, hey, you know what? This is normal and there's nothing wrong with it and it should be celebrated and it should be part of who we are. So as I've gotten older, it's become more and more important to me to have that, be that point of visibility. If you see me walk around anywhere, it doesn't matter where I am, if I'm in town, if I'm on vacation, it doesn't matter what I am. If you do not see something rainbow on me, something's wrong. I will always have something on, and I try to have many things on. I maybe went a little overboard tonight, even with the socks, but what the heck, why not? But I will always do that, and the reason is because I want the person who was me growing up, the person who didn't see a future, the person who actually thought for a little while that maybe it would have been better if they didn't continue. You know, I mean, that's just how I grew up. I want that person to see that there is love and support and people care and that you will be okay, that it will get better, and that you'll have a home and you'll have love. You'll have a community that welcomes you and supports you and wants you in their life and values you for who you are. And that is so critical to me now. So when this came up and I started volunteering and then the opportunity came up to be a chair, I was like, I need to do it because I need people to see that, and I need there to be an opportunity for them, especially for the people that maybe can't make it down to Twin Cities Pride. That's a lot. That's a lot for me, even, and you know, who's been going to it for decades. It's aging myself again. But I mean, that's a lot, and there are people that are neurodivergent that can't necessarily, I mean, that's a lot. That's a sensory overload to be down there. There are people that have young kids and want to just explore what it means to either be a supportive ally, whether they have anyone in their life directly or not, who's part of our community, or has a child that is exploring that, or whatever the case. It just was so important to me that they have a place to go and feel that sense of community and feel that love and support. So, I don't know, I could ramble on about it for hours, but it's very important to me, if you can't tell.
So follow up to that kind of, what do you consider your biggest accomplishment and your biggest regret regarding Golden Valley Pride? We'll start with you, Michael.
Why weren't we given these questions ahead of time? That is cruel and unusual. My biggest accomplishment. I think, and I'm thinking specifically about Pride, I think the thing that I'm most proud of is that we came back from COVID and we came back bigger, and we have grown every year. I think that's the thing that I'm most proud of, and that, as weird as it is to say, that people can attend that and not have any idea what goes on. They just come and they enjoy it. Like they don't, you know, I mean, I wish they were, you know, we had more people involved in it, I do, but I love that people can just go there, enjoy the day, and it's just a thing. It's just a thing that they can feel welcomed at and feel loved and supported. I mean, I'm most proud of that, to walk around and see like people just being themselves and little kids having fun and parents having fun, and that's just the most amazing thing. My biggest regret is that, you know, I don't really have one when it comes to Pride necessarily. The only thing that I would say is I wish there was more time to devote to it, because it's fully volunteer for all of us. I mean, and it always has been. There's only so many hours in the day. And I wish I could have continued chairing longer. I just needed a break, and thank you. I guess my biggest regret is that I just don't have more time to put into it. But yeah.
Peter?
I think as an accomplishment, I think certainly starting, the festival, doesn't mean it was, not just a one-person job. It was obviously a bunch of people that had everything to do with it. But as an accomplishment, that was getting it going and having it be successful. But I also kind of think of it as as kind of our gift to the city. It's now, as of last year, it was the only city event that people could participate in. So we kind of, I kind of consider that our gift as volunteers and our time as a gift to those thousands of people that show up. The majority of those, I'm sure, are people from Golden Valley. The regret is the amount of time it takes to put an event like that on with a limited number of people. The limited number of volunteers, and having to ask for money and donations and sponsors. That's a big part of the job, and it's expensive. And regret, I think, is, even from the city's point of view, is we don't get any sponsorship from the city of Golden Valley, other than, we use their police, we use their park, but we pay for the police. We don't get any monetary contributions from the city itself, so that, I think that's a regret from my point of view, not being able to accomplish that. So.
Thank you. I'd like to switch gears a little bit. No, we're going to you, John. What led you to join the Golden Valley Human Rights Commission?
The welcoming nature of the city government at the time. It's sort of the short answer. I won't name names because I know there's all, it's political. But I remember, yes I will, Larry Faunus was the first openly gay city council member, I think, in Golden Valley. And when he ran and won, I had been considering that. I lived here already 10, 12 years and was not retired at that time, and still I'm not. But Larry had retired and was a successful businessman, and he really knew numbers. That's something that impressed me about him. He watched the kitty for the city, and also people bought into his oversight, I guess. He was genuinely involved and cared about Golden Valley, and I told him that in Byerly's parking lot after he got elected. So we're not to the accomplishment part, are we?
No, I have a different question for you.
Oh, different. Okay. But what led me to join was somebody asked, basically. And
Who was the mayor?
Shep Harris at that time. He did 12 years, and 8 of my 8 years on, he was the mayor. And and that's how I guess I got appointed. Yeah, that was an appointment. It's sort of like you were appointed as the first chair of 2016 event. Yeah, that's about it. I loved it. That's the other reason. And I'm an activist attorney. I'm a longtime gay rights activist. Since 1985 is the way I've been. So it was an opportunity to be there and speak to many people.
And that's my follow-up question. Like, how did your work as an activist attorney impact your tenure on the Human Rights Commission?
Big time. Because a lot of famous, a lot of consequential federal and state legislation came through the ringer during that time. For instance, the Marriage Equality Act in Minnesota, and that was 2014, and then 2015 it became the law of the land. So 2014 is when I started on the DEI. I'm already completely. I just love it that it's DEI now, actually, because it's so in the face of what the current flow of things is happening in gay rights. That was, but that had a lot to do with it. The laws as they were changing and emerging. I thought we'd won a lot in 2016, and that's one reason I'm sitting here tonight, is that by the time that it became the law of the land, marriage equality, I said, well, now what do I do? Geez, we've succeeded, and we seem to be accepted, and now I'm learning that it's an ebb and a flow, and it calls me back to my days when I first started as an attorney and a gay rights activist in 1985, and Ronald Reagan had been president for 4 years and ignored the HIV pandemic, and didn't use the word AIDS until Elizabeth Taylor made him say it. Great friend of Rock Hudson, was in the closet until he died, essentially. And so it is an ebb and a flow. It's the perspective I have sitting in this chair tonight is pretty good. I'm optimistic, but I was going to retire from my activism, I suppose, and then it just sort of overwhelmed me when Trump got elected. that's the way it's happened, and I'm not afraid to use the word, but I won't use it one more time tonight. So, that's where I am. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question is for Seth. So, obviously, your role as the Equity and Inclusion Manager for the city, what kind of motivated you to accept this type of a particular position within the city? Golden Valley in general, but also to do this type of work?
So I did share, I previously came from DHS, so working at the state level. But my background is primarily in higher education. So I was the director of the LGBTQ Research Center at St. Cloud State for about 4 years, working with queer and trans young adults, and within the capacity of student affairs, and absolutely loved it. What a rewarding and wonderful experience it is. And I was just talking to some of my colleagues today in that working up in St. Cloud, I was first moved into the profession of student affairs working at Ball State University in Muncie, Indiana. I was their assistant director for multicultural center. I don't remember what it's called now. Multicultural center at the time, and that at that time the center was really trying to diversify how it was thinking about culture and thinking about how are we pulling in marginalized students of a variety of backgrounds. And so luckily through a little bit of my background in my undergrad, I was able to build some partnerships with some of our student organizations at Ball State University, and then that propelled me to be the director. I was one of the youngest directors, I'm going to toot my horn here, youngest directors of LGBTQ Research Center in the nation. I was 25 years old. It was very fresh, very large learning curve. But I think it also paid off because I was closer to the students in age that I was working with and was able to understand their lived experience, but also able to pull in the lived experience of rural queers within Muncie, Indiana, and in Indiana, and really pull it in. Although St. Cloud is a city, it really pulls in a lot of rural students. But one of my big things about working within identity affairs at in higher education is that those institutions aren't built for those students. Those institutions aren't built for Black students. Those institutions aren't built for women. They aren't built for queer students. The history of higher education is for white Christian young men. And policies and practices, although they may be rewritten and restructured, they still continue to benefit that population. And so that was a large driving force of wanting to work in identity affairs, is because I'm working against a system that doesn't want these students here, and I'm telling them that they do belong here, and that their lives have value, and that their experiences have value, and that they can propel their life through having an educational career, whatever they're choosing. And part of that allowed me to partner with St. Cloud Pride to kind of also see a smaller suburban pride. I will say that Golden Valley is pretty phenomenal. But that gave me an insight into, with being part of Minnesota State system schools, it gave me an insight into what does the state government look like here, and how does it function, and how does it operate, and I was able to have contacts. Eventually left higher education and kind of saw the writing on the wall, unfortunately, with St. Cloud State, and then just what kind of higher education was turning into, and unfortunately it's become a target for our current federal administration for a variety of reasons, which includes DEI practices and programs. Just recently saw that Harvard is shutting down their LGBT Resource Center, which is considered one of the best in the nation. So I think that's unfortunately a domino to potential other institutions doing the same, and then pulling all of those centers into one center and asking them to fight for the same funds. So just keep an eye out for our institutions here. If you are in support of those kind of centers, I really think that you should definitely see how you can support them. Whether it's U of M, whether it's Augsburg, whether it's private or public, really take a look at those institutions. Those students really do thrive when they're able to tap into those identity centers. So all of that, worked in private sector for a little bit, did DEI there, it was interesting, realized I'm a public servant at heart. Then worked in for the state, and then I realized that I missed engaging at that sort of personal level. I get to see the impact that I'm having on the students that I'm working with when I'm in higher education. I can see them change year to year, and it's hard to do that at the state, especially within healthcare administration operating Medicaid and Minnesota Care. You're like, cool, we have enrollees, this is great. I really don't understand how it's being impacted, and even though we try to do community data, it wasn't particularly done well. And this opportunity came along, and I get to work in policy, I get to work in hiring practices, I get to work alongside a commission and have community input on the daily. And I also get to work in a city government that consistently values diversity, equity, and inclusion and allows it to thrive. And then that's also from the city as well, or the community as well. That is very palpable across this community, that diversity, equity, and inclusion is of value, and that the community wants it to be lived out in its local government. And so applied, and I get to do some incredible things. A lot of it's behind the scenes, so you always don't get to see it, but it's really remarkable what our city gets to do and how fast we're moving the needle in comparison to some of our fellow cities, especially in the west suburbs.
So, last question, I think, due to time, and it's going to be a two-parter, apologies, and it's going to be for everyone. In your opinion, why is the LGBTQ community important to Golden Valley, and where do you envision Golden Valley and its LGBTQ community in the next 5 to 10 years?
What was the first question again? Sorry.
Why is the community important to Golden Valley?
I think all of us probably are going to say some type of this, but it enriches the community ultimately. It makes the community more dynamic, it makes it more diverse, and I think it gives our community an edge, both in sort of a queer way, like queer theory kind of way, and then also just in other suburbs. Like it is well known that this community is a queer community, and even when I was working in St. Cloud, when people talk about Golden Valley, they're like, oh yeah, that's a gay city. Like it's across the entire state. Granted, St. Cloud's in central Minnesota, but it frankly just enriches it. It makes it more lively, it makes it more exciting, it makes it more dynamic, and it gives this sort of flavor that other cities just don't have. When it comes to the LGBT plus community next these 5 to 10 years,
Yes.
I do foresee us continuing to grow. The LGBT plus population continues to grow year over year statistically. And then I also see us as becoming more racially and ethnically diverse, and that also being a much more intersectional community, where we're going to have a larger cutie population here. And I think that's going to put some specific eyes and pressure on GV Pride to diversify its board around race and ethnicity, but I see that as an incredible positive thing, and yeah.
You're right. I think I would echo your sentiments that I think it's true of anything. I mean, even in the corporate world where I came from, the big focus was on diversity, and the idea that diversity is so much more than it's a big part of it is outward appearance, a big part of it is inside, and the more diverse group you have, the more resilient you are, the more satisfied you are, the more accomplished. I think it's so important that we do that. I also think a big thing that's happening right now is, again, based on the current administration, you find that at the federal level and at other state levels, you find that a lot of folks are moving to this area. We are a sanctuary state. There are a number of people that are moving here because they don't have a home. I think it was 2 years ago, maybe it was 3 years ago, we had a paralegal association. It was their first time doing a pride, and they chose ours. And I made it a point always to talk to all the vendors and all the people that were there and the sponsors and everything. So I talked to them afterwards and I said, how did it go? And they said it was incredible. And I said, that's great, I'm glad. I was a little concerned, I didn't know what they'd get for legal questions and things like that. And they said, the most fascinating thing they said is that the majority of the people that we talked to were not from Golden Valley originally. They were here because they didn't have a choice. They had to leave where they lived. They left the South. They left an unwelcoming state and moved here. So they had legal questions and they needed help. They just didn't know where to turn and what to do and what that meant for them. And I thought that's amazing and something that maybe we aren't always as aware of either, of the people that moved to our community and the transplants, like many of us were, that moved here and need that help and assistance. So I think the more voices like that we can have, the more people like that we can have join our community, the better we are, and the stronger we are because of it. The 5-10 years, I really hope we continue the progress we've made here. You know, we speak of the LGBTQIA plus community, and that's obviously where our strength is. But our strength is our allies. Our strength is all the people that support us and our friends and family. And for all our talk of that, I don't want to forget how important it is that we have all of you with us, regardless of where you identify and what, you know, what your family looks like. It's just important that we all have each other, and I hope that continues to grow. I mean, I even remember when I first moved here and we first started Pride. We first started. I didn't start. You guys started, but we continued that tradition. And you know, having some challenges with people calling and complaining about the fact that we had a Pride. We would put our signs out for the festival, and we had people call the city and complain that we had GV Pride signs out there on public property because they didn't believe in Pride and they thought it was terrible that we had such a thing like that, and they were insistent that those things be taken down. So that is a battle that we fought a few years ago, and we still fight. So that is a thing, you know, as I look out at the community, I think that's where we need to continue to make progress. We need to continue to support that and not fall back into things that we can easily fall back into. So I just want to see that grow and continue.
I was heavily influenced by The Wizard of Oz and Dorothy in her statement, there's no place like home. And I think that is a feel that comes across in Golden Valley. And that's what I see in the future. And people are building their homes and their lives here in their community, and they feel safe. Especially people that are otherwise cast out by a certain segment of society, or ignored or complain about their existence. So there's no place like home. You can just see Dorothy singing that. That will always be etched in my brains. And she, by the way, of course, Judy Garland is from Grand Rapids, and they have a pretty strong gay community in Grand Rapids too. You guys know that. So that's what I see as a building of future and safety. People need to feel safe, and that's true no matter what community you're in. And I think that we are taking a conscious effort as members of this community to make people feel welcome and at home. That's about it. And I think that'll continue.
I think I'll start with that 10 to 15 year outlook. And I think at least my perspective, that's working on the Pride Festival, I think that's hopefully in 10 to 15 years, that's kind of a small part of what Golden Valley is involved in to make it a welcoming city. I've got 3 kids, I have families that live in Golden Valley. And we like it because of that reputation, because of the atmosphere here, and it's welcoming to not only LGBT people, but hopefully everybody. So that's what I hope we're going to continue to see. move that along. I hope they do, and so you guys can move it along, so, thank you.
Thank you.
Can I add one thing to that? I'm not a naturally quiet person. In fact, I probably speak quieter into that because I'm scared that I'm gonna be too loud, so, no one's ever complained about having you hear me. The one thing that you all said or the thing that I was thinking about when we were talking about, pride and its importance and its role and everything like that, and it's a plea. I just want something I want to throw out to everyone and ask for your help with, because we need help. We always need help. You may not be aware of this, but the executive director of Twin Cities Pride has told both Nick and I before that when they talk about other Pride festivals and other, especially suburban and local, rural community Pride festivals, talk to him about, you know, what it looks like and what to do. They point to us. They point to Golden Valley. We have that reputation that our Pride Festival is so important to the community and so important to people here, and I mean, well run, well organized. Well, I mean, that has become a thing, and we are known for that. I mean, we were the first suburban Pride here because of the work that you all put into this.
That was a big part of the marketing.
Yeah, but it's known. I mean, people know that and they understand that, and they look at us as leadership when it comes to that because of what you all started. So that is a big thing. I don't know that everyone necessarily knows that we have that reputation out there as being so important, and that people look to us for leadership in the smaller Pride space and everything like that. And I think that's really important. So when we talk about 5 to 10 years and what that looks like for us, that growth, that leadership, that continuation is so important. And to do that, we need help from the community, from our allies, from our community, but the broader community. So that's something I just wanted to plant out there and put that seed out there. So maybe that kind of disseminates a little bit and people hear that, because we need help to continue putting that on. And I mean, we were just had a meeting the other day and we're talking about how we need volunteers, you know, we still need people to help out with the festival. So plant those seeds. If you hear someone say something about like, well, I've heard they have one, we more than have one. So come and be a part of that and join us. And that will make the next 5 to 10 years.
Can I add something to that?
Yeah.
I think something that you've all kind of hinted at that I think needs to be spoken is that like Golden Valley Pride has become a fixture of the community and of the history of Golden Valley, frankly. To kind of come back to the main topic. And so I hope people can kind of understand that and grasp that, and use whatever like networks and power that you have to put your arms around Golden Valley Pride, but also around this community. You're seeing it in the news, you're seeing it with various executive orders, you're seeing it with other states. You all were talking about how other states are passing various laws. You're seeing it even close by, where St. Louis Park a couple years ago was in the news about a book ban because some teachers had books around LGBTQ families in their primarily K through like 5th grade classes, so elementary classes, so like on top of your time and your monies and your energy, this community, along with many other communities, need your voice, they need your support, they need your activism and whatever that looks like now more than ever, because it's going to get ugly, and it's going to continue to get ugly. And part of that is supporting Golden Valley Pride, and part of it is supporting your neighbors and being vocal with your neighbors. And so I just want to can really hone in that Golden Valley Pride has become a fixture and has become a fixture of Golden Valley's history and should be treated as such.
And I think if you, and I would invite anyone to do this, if you want to, if you don't attend, if you haven't attended before, or if you attend but just for a little bit of time, you don't have a chance to immerse yourself a little more in it, I would encourage you to spend a little time down at the festival and watch people and listen to people and talk to people. And I know you've heard this too, the feedback that I've gotten from people about the festival and how important it is to them, people that aren't in our community right here, that come to our community because they want that sense, they want to understand that, they want to be part of something like that, they find it a wonderful place to celebrate. That is a reflection on everyone here. And that's so important, so I encourage you to be a part of that, even if it's just to come down to the festival and you just want to hang out for a little while and sit in the merch booth and help us sell merch. Oh, I'm sorry, did I start recruiting again? But I mean, if you just want to come, yeah. I never stop, yeah. But if you ever want to come, just come down and observe that and understand the importance that it has for people. It's a big deal.
Thank you. So we kind of come to the end of the questions that I had planned out for tonight, but I'm going to do 2 plugs right now. First plug is this. It's for the Golden Valley Public Library. What is wonderful about the Golden Valley Public Library is for every program that we do, they've started pulling books off their shelf to actually showcase the topic that we're talking about. And right now, they have books on display regarding the LGBTQ community and the LGBTQ community in Minnesota and Twin Cities. So a tremendous kind of plug, as we've been talking about, to them standing up, them showing up, and really supporting. And so if you have the opportunity to get down to the public library, thank you for doing that. Check out the books, and check out some of the programs that we do. The second thing that we have, and we're kind of moving into the question and answer session, so I'm going to page past a few slides here because I want to get to the last slide. And what I want you all to know is that Golden Valley Historical Society has an exhibit specifically on Golden Valley Pride and the LGBTQ community in Golden Valley. And because of this, the first question for our question and answer session is from me, again, sorry, but it goes to the president of the Golden Valley Historical Society, Lynn. Lynn, why does GVHS have an exhibit on on Golden Valley Pride and the LGBTQ community? And, because I'm notorious for my 2
You can't
personal
ask
questions.
just one question.
Right, no. Why is it important?
Thank you for asking that question, or that series of questions, those nested questions. You know, you started off with a slide that was his story, and I think museums are really foundational for telling those stories. It's a place you come to learn about a thing or a topic, and we are tasked with telling the story of a city that the Pride Festival and the LGBTQ+ community is really central to the community at large and an important part of the community. So when you walk through our museum exhibition, our permanent exhibition space, which is about the community at large, there are professions, is education, there's people's contributions to the community, and the Pride Festival and the LGBTQ+ community is an important component of the community and needs to be a part of that and needs to be seen as a part of that. So it's there for an inclusion purpose, it's there for the purpose of reflecting honestly the community as it exists in Golden Valley. It's also there to remind people that the community is an inclusive and equitable community and that we're striving for to become better all the time. So it is a part of the story that is the history of the city of Golden Valley. And it's an important part, as the panelists here have kind of expanded on this evening.
With that, any questions from anyone? Yes?
I have a question for Jonathan. Who was your realtor? That might be the person from the book.
His name was Steve Figelmiller.
That's a little bit made that up.
Well, that's why
It's
you
actually the
understand.
same. He had a twin brother whose name was Paul Figelmiller. And, yeah, Steve Figelmiller, and he's now retired, and I think he lives in Acapulco.
All right. Other questions?
Oh,
Yes,
I have
Ken.
other questions.
Ken?
Hi, I'm Ken. Past president of the Golden Valley Historical Society. Like some of you, I'm not a Minnesota native. First 25 years in Delaware, last 40 years in Minnesota. Of the 40 years, 5 in Bryn Mawr and 35 in, I guess, Lavender Hills, South Tyrol Hills. Did you go to school with the Redelius kids?
They were younger than me.
The Gibbons kids?
I don't know, maybe.
Roxwell kids. I'm surrounded by these families who've been in the neighborhood since the 1960s and are still there with their adult kids. And it was said early on that Golden Valley historically embarked upon some human rights initiatives. And I think it's also important to recognize the reason they did that is that there was a history of some human rights abuses here in Golden Valley. And that's also covered as part of the story of the Golden Valley Historical Society. And you know the title of the display at the Golden Valley Historical Society, Mr. Burns? I think you do. You already said it. No Place Like Home. That's the overall title of the display at the
Blazer.
That's the only place it's going to.
And so you've got 5 guys here tonight, and I guess it's wonderful and encouraging that the sense I'm getting is that your experience has been pretty positive and upbeat in Golden Valley. But you probably also recognize if we picked a different 5 guys from the gay community in Golden Valley, it hasn't necessarily always been polka dots and moonbeams in Golden Valley for the gay community. Would that also be fair to say?
Yeah, I think that's a good call out. One of the things that we didn't get to cover much tonight, but is part of the overall story, is the struggle that the gay community experienced here. Yes, in 1978, there was an initiative to put a gay rights ordinance in the city, but it was ultimately voted down. And then again in 1989, there was a push to establish a home for people living with AIDS, and that was eventually voted down as well. It was killed in a commission. And so the story, well, recently, Rosie in Golden Valley hasn't always been the best. And so it kind of does come back to the quote by John Anderson or Steve Finkelmiller or whoever. I just need to commit it to memory. You know, there's a way that some of the gay community has been able to survive in Golden Valley. And in a lot of ways, to your point, Ken, it's been assimilation, where if we pick a different group of people, the conversation would be completely different. So.
Well, one of the reasons I ask is that I've been in Golden Valley for 35 years now, and I would be hard-pressed to explain to somebody what is Golden Valley. For example, where I live, I have to drive through St. Louis Park to get here tonight. I'm way down in the corner, and in a sense, there are many different Golden Valleys, versions within Golden Valley, it would seem to me. I don't know if your experience has been different.
Yeah, I think that's a good call out. Anyone?
Well, I mean, so even, again, back to that thing that I said earlier about, you know, being on the board and working through Pride and feeling really positive about what we were doing and good about that, and then having that wake-up call that some people had called the city and complained about that, and that they thought it wasn't fit for our community, that we have a festival like that and they didn't approve it, and how dare we and everything. And it's those types of things. It's the, and that's writ small. I mean, I realize that, and I am older, so I lived through the epidemic days and everything like that, and everything. But I think sometimes we do take it for granted, and then having that wake-up call, and I think for any and all of us that have had those moments where someone has said something basically denying your existence or telling you that you didn't have the right to be who you are, it's a gut punch. And we're working on something like that where you feel so good about it, and then someone comes along like that, it can just sweep your legs right out from underneath you. And it happens, and it still happens, and I hope to God it doesn't continue to happen here. We need to not let that happen.
Could I pick up on that? Just
Yes.
And this was aimed once again, more towards Peter, I think, in the context of festival.
Sure.
Okay, so my experience of festival is, I know George Abai, Carl Cambrone, all those crazy people up on Kelly Drive, who've been instrumental with the festival. And for years, there was a Golden Valley Festival, and they took it in the direction of an art and music festival. Deaths, retirements, aging out, the pandemic, it kind of got mothballed. And now this year, they brought it back. Now it's just the festival, right? And coming here tonight, one of the questions that occurred to me was, well, why are we having a Golden Valley Gay Pride Festival in the first place? And I think you answered that question. Coming in tonight, I thought, oh, well, there was a Golden Valley contingent, and they participated in the Twin Cities Pride Festival, but somehow they felt excluded, shut out, like they weren't being listened to. So they came back and said, we need to have our own Golden Valley Pride Festival. It sounds like from your description, though, that wasn't really it.
No, well, not from my point of view, it wasn't. Mine was more from a community event perspective and focusing on the reputation that Golden Valley has, and that's what I wanted to build up.
But I'll tell you,
It could have gone any different.
But you were very active with the festival for many years.
Oh, yeah,
Did
absolutely.
you ever, when you went, did you feel uncomfortable at the event because you were part of the gay community and
Well,
you
I'm
weren't
not
feeling
part of-
welcome there or something like
I'm not
that?
part of the gay community.
That's okay.
he's an ally.
I'm
We love him anyway.
I'm the token straight guy. But I think it's still,
Again.
You didn't know until tonight, Peter, didn't you?
but that was my idea. You know, the idea was building on the reputation that Golden Valley had and supporting them. So I've got nieces, nephews, they're trans and gay and lesbian, and I wanted to show them that we can do something different. So,
And I think, to your point about how it's viewed, it's interesting that you ask that, because the way we look at it and the way it's evolved and the way it works with Twin Cities Pride, we partner. We are in constant communication, and if you talk to the folks at Twin Cities Pride, they would tell you we serve different demographics, we overlap, but there's a difference in what we do, and we are supplemental to and part of a much broader Pride community, and that idea that we all partner, we talk about dates with each other, go to summits and compare notes about what we're doing. Twin Cities Pride has helped us out with, hey, do you need tents, do you need this, what can we do? We've talked to other prides that are smaller than us about what can we do to help you. So I think you find that it's a community that is additive, and that we have evolved into this broader network, this web of prides that support each other. The people that come to our Pride Festival, a lot of them go to Twin Cities Pride, I certainly do and did, but a lot of the people that come to ours don't feel comfortable at Twin Cities Pride, not because there's anything wrong with Twin Cities Pride, it's just the setting. It's big, it's busy, it's loud, it's extreme for them, and they're not comfortable with that, so they come to ours. And I've had more people than you can imagine come up and say, oh, I'm so happy that you guys have your festival, you're my pride. Like, I've had people from other cities in the metro area say, you're my pride, because we have an event that they feel is more community focused, they're very comfortable in it and everything, so it's a very additive experience. So, it's really nice.
One concern I have is that somehow, in a sense, it doesn't feel like Golden Valley is significant, substantial, big enough to pull off multiple festivals. So is there a contingent within the gay community that asks, gee, why can't we all just go to one festival?
in Golden Valley.
Yeah, versus having multiple festivals.
I think you hit on the point when asking some of your other questions, is that there's a need and a priority that has to be had to have unique festivals, specific cultural festivals, specific festivals around communities, and especially marginalized communities. It's a way to gather, it's a way to hold space, it's a way to see each other, see representation physically, And to be frankly in community in a way that feels unique, prideful, no pun intended, and also be able to sort of fly in the face of a world that tells them otherwise. And so, again, whether that is a LGBTQ plus Pride Festival, or a Somali Festival, or a, I don't know, just any other sort of like culture or background, there's value in it, and I think it also, what that does is it helps to diversify the offerings that are out there. If we have one festival, things are gonna get diluted. Things are going to be stripped down to sort of its bare bones, and you're gonna have a table for this organization, a table for that organization, or a table for that culture, and it's gonna look blasé, frankly, in my opinion, where when we have these separate festivals, it allows things to really shine and be bright, and really show up in the broader community. So, just my perspective.
No, I think you hit on a good point, and the other thing that I would say too is, you could probably attest to this too, as someone who does a lot of work on festivals, you need to continually be reinventing yourself. That's literally where we've gotten to this year. You know, we're moving into 2026, and we started in 2016, and so unfortunately for the people still on the committee, I'm driving the direction of we need to be bigger, we need to be bolder, we need to, they see a lot of work in front of them. But the point of that is you need to continually be evolving your festival in order to still excite people and get people out, or else your festival ends up being the same people doing it over and over and over again and getting burnt out, and your festival burns out. And so that's why you have to evolve from lavender days or lilac days. There's lilac time, and then to the Golden Valley Art Music Festival, and now the Golden Valley Festival in general. Because if you don't have that constant evolution, eventually you just dissolve.
And I think one other thing about Pride, speaking about Pride a lot because I care about it, obviously, it's not, it is incredibly important to me that we create that safe space, that we make that space for people, that we create an opportunity for them to be loved and respected, to be who they are without qualification. The other part of it, which is maybe the more utilitarian part, but I feel very strongly about this also, it is an opportunity. So we have a lot of people from the community want to be involved as far as local businesses and everything, which is great. That's one aspect of the community, is to bring them in. That can easily be part of other festivals as well. I mean, that can fit any festival needed in the city. But the one thing that I think is really important is bringing people from outside the community in where people don't have that exposure. So what I mean by that is, you'll see if you walk around Pride, for example, that you'll have a lot of booths there from services that are not necessarily a core part of a suburb like Golden Valley. So you'll find people there from adoption agencies, from health agencies, adoption agencies, things like that for kids, especially LGBTQIA plus kids. You'll find organizations coming in to talk about HIV prevention and HIV treatment. You'll have people come in and talk about things that are important to our broader LGBTQIA plus community that don't necessarily live out in the suburb. And that's a big part of the festival for me, always was, when we were coordinating, was reaching out to those organizations and saying, HRC, please tell me you can come to the festival. I really need you out here in the community, because people are going to be walking through this park who are not exposed to you normally. And for a lot of parents, especially, that bring their kids there, I've heard it say, this is great, these are resources I didn't know we had at our fingertips. So that's a very targeted thing I think that Pride does. It doesn't just celebrate our community and the LGBTQIA plus folks that are in the city, it also brings resources into a suburban setting like this that they can experience and understand and be part of. And educate folks outside of our alphabet, if you will. So.
And I think a big thing about the resources piece is that each community has various needs that need to be met. And those resources are specific to needs that are part of the LGBT plus community, that are unique from other communities as well, that your work throughout your time probably has worked at and engaged at to allow those resources to exist. I'm just assuming this within your practice. So stuff like Red War, stuff like Aliveness Project, stuff like Trans Lifeline or E-Flag and that kind of thing, where these resources are targeted to the lived experience that is unique of LGBTQ that other festivals couldn't and haven't, most frankly, probably it wouldn't be as impactful if other festivals had that.
Those are really good questions.
Yeah,
for
thank you.
those. Appreciate that.
Yes.
I was just gonna make a comment.
Yeah.
I think of the Voters has been there for the first year, and in 2024, we had the busiest table ever, and they all wanted to register to vote, and we had so many that had come to Minnesota because the trans refuge bill that had passed. And, you know, it's kind of nice to see that we are such a welcoming community, and maybe only about half the people that are here at the festival live in Golden Valley. So many are from the broader area. I was surprised at the number of people in Suburban St. Paul that we had coming to town.
Yeah, we actually did some statistical analysis as much as we could do this last year, and we did pull in some very interesting stats on where people are coming from. Yes, there are a lot of people that answered our survey that are coming from Golden Valley, but there are a lot of people that answered our survey that weren't from Golden Valley. They were from St. Louis Park, they were from St. Paul, they were from the St. Paul suburbs, and that was a very interesting and surprising piece for us. And I will also say, all of this, every part of the LGBTQ community in Golden Valley owes a lot to the League of Women Voters. We have a small but quite interesting collection within our archive of material, and the League of Women Voters was very big in the 1970s and that initial push for the gay rights part of the city code. So thank you for representing the league and for being here.
I was a member then, I hadn't been involved on the board at that time.
But yes, thank you. Other questions? All right, well then if not, thank you very much. Thank you panelists for being part of this tonight. And thank you all for coming. If you have any additional stories that you want to share, I would love to hear them. This is, as I've said, a bit of an evolving find for me, and hopefully we can continue to grow our exhibit at the museum and continue to tell this story within the city. So thank you.
Great job.